May all beings be happy. May all beings be healthy. May all beings be free from harm. May all beings love life. May all beings awaken. Welcome to another Cuke Audio podcast. I'm DC Poobah of Cuke Audio and Cuke Archives, preserving the legacy of Shunryu Suzuki and those whose paths crossed his and anything else that comes to mind. I pray that you and yours are safe and comfortable and free of economic hardship and able to get out and do whatever it is you want within the limitations of the universal precept of do as little harm as possible. Today we have a guest, Nicole Baden. Now, Nicole is a student of Richard Baker's, Zentatsu Richard Baker Roshi, and she's been with him for a long time. This is the 22nd year, I'd say. She's practiced both at the Center Johanneshof in the Black Forest in Germany, the Dharma Sangha. Dharma Sangha is Richard Baker's group, and Dharma Sangha Germany, their center is in the Black Forest. It's very nice. I've spent time there. I love it. And she's also spent time practicing at Crestone Zen Mountain Center in Colorado. I don't need to say any more about her. You'll learn. So we'll get right into talking with Nicole as soon as we've had our pause to meditate. So when you hear the bell, hit pause, if you wish, and meditate or whatever for as long as you wish. And when you're ready to come back, hit unpause, and we'll hit the bell to end the meditation. And we'll give Nicole a call.
Hello.
Nicole, David, Chadwick.
Hi, David.
Hi.
Hi.
Are you busy?
I always am busy, but that's okay. I'm just sitting here at my computer.
Yeah. So I'm going to record this, okay?
Oh, okay. All right.
And if you talk long enough, if we talk long enough, we can use it for a podcast, or even short enough.
Oh, okay.
Because
right.
here we are. Anything I can do to help with the Baker Roshi's lectures. Now, I think one thing I can do is just send you, I guess just Dropbox is the
Yeah.
best, then you can have it, right? Or do you already have it?
It depends. I don't exactly know which one you're talking about.
I'm talking about all 600
Oh,
approximately lectures
oh,
he gave in the United States that I
I
digitized.
am pretty sure I do not have them. No,
Yeah.
no.
So
So that
let's,
would be great.
um, I'll share the folder in Dropbox and you can
Okay.
download it.
Okay. All right. Well, that's great. Yeah.
How soon he has access to when I was at the warehouse with the cigarette package?
One moment. Baker Roshi wants to know something. What do you need?
He has the story about the warehouse and the cigarette package.
Roshi is wondering if you have access to the story with the warehouse and the cigarette package. Do you know what he's referring to?
Did he say cigarette package?
Yeah, that's what he said.
What on
Yeah.
earth has he like sort of gone crazy and saying weird things?
No, not yet. No, but I also am not quite sure. Like Roshi, David doesn't right now know what you're referring to. Should I explain to him or? Okay. Well, there is a particular story that Roshi has told very often, which is in the very, very early years of his practice, or I don't know, maybe even, no, it must be in the early years of his practice, when he he was still smoking, but he claims he never inhaled. And he threw a cigarette package out on the outside, just threw it away.
By a railroad
track.
track.
Yeah. So then he had a big recognition, and that he turned into a teaching about how there's no outside. And somehow he can't find, I guess, the original version of that story. And I guess he's wondering
Remind
if
me.
you've
Just
come across that.
Tell him.
Yeah.
Tell him. I do know that story, and send me an email.
Okay. All right. I tell him that.
And then as soon as I see the email, I'll see what I have and send it to both of you.
Okay.
All right?
Okay. Perfect.
Tell him that now.
Yes. Oh, Roshi, you should send David an email with a reminder.
You should send me an email.
Oh, I should. Okay. But wait, then what am I supposed to tell him if I'm supposed to send you the email?
Just send me an email and say cigarette pack. You're just reminding me to deal with it.
Oh, I see. Okay. All right. Doing that right now. Cigarette pack. All right.
And ask him what about matches. Does he remember matches?
You remember matches? Yeah, were there matches involved?
No, matches is fireman funds insurance.
Yeah, that's right. It's a different story.
Yeah.
It's a different story.
That's a different story. Yeah, that's a different story. Yeah.
Good. Yeah, we've got to keep the matches away from the cigarette pack because they're a bad combination. Okay, now can you really talk with him there? I mean, is he listening to you?
We'll see. If I get too uncomfortable, I just move to my bedroom where I at least imagine I have some privacy, although I think you can basically just hear. But that's okay. No, it'll be fine.
Yeah. Why don't you do that?
All right. Okay. I have to unplug my device here, though. Why? Are we going to talk about him or?
No, not at all.
Oh, okay.
We're going to talk about you.
Okay.
But I want you to. I want you to feel free. I don't want you to have to talk about yourself with your teacher there.
No, that's a very sensitive and good idea.
Yeah.
I've moved. One moment. That's true. That will make a difference. Okay, so I am in my room.
Yeah. And also, I suggest you send an email that says Dropbox lectures.
Okay.
I mean,
I can't do that now anymore, but yeah, because now I'm in my bedroom, but I'll send it after we finish.
I really don't think I'll forget that. But
okay.
if I get it in an email, I will see it and I will tend to it right away.
Okay.
And it's not impossible that a week from now I could go, or 2 weeks I go, oh, I never sent so and so, but
Yeah.
we'll see.
Yeah.
Um, so Nicole, right now, why don't you tell me what you're doing? Where are you and what are you doing?
All right. Okay. So I'm in Denver,
Mm-hmm.
actually at a beautiful part of Denver called Sloan's Lake. And I chose that location quite intentionally because it just, the location we have here okay, well, maybe I start differently. I'm here with Baker Roshi. And our intention is we've set some time aside so that Baker Roshi can actually start working on his book, which that's 40 years overdue. Yeah, when we first started talking about doing this, we collected ideas of how that might all work out and what the book could be about and so forth. And when I first started collecting texts, I said to him, well, you have this title reserved, Original Mind, and that title has been reserved for 40 years. I mean, a real 40 years, not an exaggerated 40 years.
Uh-huh.
And and he said that, I don't know what the word is, but had a copyright or whatever on it, and nobody could take that title. And so, and he's very clear on that that's going to be the title of his book. So I asked him, well, geez, now that we've started to discuss what the book might be, what if the title doesn't fit anymore? And then he said, oh, well, in that case, we are clearly not writing the right book. So we're kind of stuck with the title. But yeah, it's an interesting process of we're doing two things, of collecting all the old material that he's produced over the course of the years, but also trying to bring in his newer perspectives
Mm-hmm.
on the teachings.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and so that's the purpose of what we're doing. I can say a little bit more about that later, but first of all, the first recognition, I suppose, was that that's the kind of project is just too big to do on the side. And so both, especially Roshi, but also in the last few years, when I've tried to collect a few of his writings and see if I could turn that into some cohesive or at least coherent object that could turn into a collection of essays or something. I found I can't do that when I'm in a community setting, when I'm in the monastery. So that's actually something for someone with the kind of life that I have or that Roshi has. That's a real recognition to understand that certain things you can't do when you're in the midst of an active community. Community has it has such an absorbing quality, even if it doesn't ask anything or much of you. But people are fantastic. They understand you need your space and they cook for you and so forth. And still, there's this element where you're just always part of something different. And so we had this recognition that we needed some time outside of this active monastic community. Yeah. And so we booked this Airbnb, and it was, for me personally, important to have some place that's near a lake. I don't exactly know why, it's just that lakes make me feel good. Mm-hmm. And so that's where we are. And we've spent the last month here and gotten a real, I think, start with and a good mixture of what we think how Baker Roshi's book could be composed of both older texts that are already written. That's the great advantage of them.
Yeah.
And the advantage of newer stuff that he's doing is just so much more refined. There's so much more authority in it. So we're trying to find a mix of getting those two, like just being time efficient using old stuff.
Yeah.
But also the old stuff has a more personal quality. For some reason, he used to write more in a way that's, I would call it at first glance accessible. But his newer stuff has a lot more. His newer stuff is the kind of thing that I think very few people in the world of Zen are able to write and to talk about with some authority.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, just about anything he says in a lecture or anything he writes is unique. He has, Original Mind is a good name. I don't know why you'd want anything else. It could apply to anything. But he really has an original mind. And, I mean, he's, it's both original and deep. So, good combination. And interesting. Well, anyway. I know he told me recently that he had assumed his older writings were not applicable now or whatever, but that he's been pleasantly surprised to see some of them could be adapted to this work you're doing now.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Hey, take a look at, this might not work. This might not be applicable, but like I mentioned, I had the first 30 of his lectures in America transcribed. And I've got a few others from back then transcribed. So you might find something juicy in there. And the transcriber here...
That's all on Puke, right? That's all on Puke?
No. I don't put any of his lectures on Puke without his permission. Are you kidding? No.
I thought, but that may have been an audio, actually. I'm wondering, because not so long ago, maybe a couple of years ago, I looked up the lecture he gave on the day that Suzuki Roshi died.
Yeah, well, that was published. That was published by Zen Center. That was made available. So anything like that, I do. But all sorts of them were not. So, he likes to micromanage his stuff. So I'm not going to step in on that, which is fine with me.
Okay.
I understand. I understand. I put stuff up all the time. I don't want other people... I don't know what I want. Anyway, so you've been here a month. Hey, how did you come to America at this difficult time with the virus?
But it did help. Looking back now, it did help that Baker Roshi had an episode of an undefined medical problem. We still think it was probably a mild seizure or something like that.
Yeah.
But he kind of felt disoriented, and I mean seriously disoriented, like in terms of his balance and so forth, for a couple of weeks or so. And that was pretty worrisome. When I talked to him during those days, he had also his whole mood and so forth. There was a feeling of, this is the end of my life. And so it was pretty dramatic and serious. And
that was
so
when?
That was when? That was like in November.
Yeah.
Last year, November. Yeah. And so what I did when that became clear is, we started talking about, well, okay, let's take that seriously. Let's take that serious for a moment, and let's think about what would that really mean if you were dying. And it became very clear that, things aren't clarified. There's a lot. He has such a complex life in 3 different locations, and a personal life, and clearly a dharmic life, and possessions that are, so many of his possessions are just in public space, right? They are in both centers, distributed everywhere.
Yeah.
And so that's the material level, but then also just the the dharmic level, there's so much not clarified. So I said to him, geez, if there's any chance you might be seriously ill, I need to be able to see you so that we can, take care of some basic administrative stuff, but also his main thing really was, his main priority, more than mine actually, was the book, although I can see clearly how important the book would be. But yeah, I mean, there were just so many things that appeared as if there's any chance you might be seriously ill, then there are certain things we just need to take care of. And so that was enough of a reason, showing my position in the Dharma Sangha, together with showing his position in the Dharma Sangha as the founder, and then saying that there was a medical problem, which we got easily a certification about that medical problem. And that was enough to get a special immigration permission. I had to go to the consulate and file that request, and it had to be really thoroughly documented, which we all did, and then they approved of it. And so I got that special permit.
Ah, and there you are.
Yeah.
Yeah. Have you been to Creststone? Did you go to Creststone, to the Creststone Mountain Zen Center?
Absolutely. Yeah, it's the first thing I did. And I was there, unfortunately, really only for like a week or so. But that was great. It was fantastic to see everyone. I wish I could be there a little more, but it's with the limited time, I can only be here all in all for 2 months. So I'm going to go one more time before I have to fly back. Yeah, and that's going to have to be enough for now.
You mean your visa is only for 2 months?
Yeah. Yeah, and well, my visa would have been, the maximum would have been 3 months, but then, as you may not know, there's this traditional session, always April 1st through the 8th, and I completely have to be back at Johanneshof for that, so I really can't stay longer than like end of March.
But you could come back after that.
Actually the laws around Corona would have to change. I can't get a second special immigration thing. That was it for me.
It'll change.
So only when the borders are opening. Yeah, I hope so.
Yeah, it'll change.
Yeah, with vaccinations and so forth, I'm sure.
Yeah. Well, that's great. That's neat what you're doing.
Yeah.
And you're working with someone else.
Yeah. And then,
Keith,
we had a couple of students. Exactly. We got a couple of students involved. I mean, actually, the involvement is a little multi-layered, I would say. So we had Keith here for the whole first part of this project. And he helped us get started. That was really important, because so much of this too is I want to document stuff, for around all of the different things that we're doing towards, like, I'm still calling in my personal computer folders, this whole time here is called End of Life Project. I don't tell Baker Roshi that it's called, but for me that's what it is. And so I'm trying to document everything that happens here, instructions around, like, boy, the guy he's a walking, I don't know where to start. We have a joke, Baker Roshi and I have a joke. Sometimes I can't take in more information because he's just so abundant with like new complex insights that are very difficult for me to absorb all at once. And our little joke is I get tired at some point, and a little slightly annoyed with not wanting to hear more. I'm like, oh God, I just need a break. And he calls these insight turtles for some reason. He had a dream where I was in his dream, he told me, I was annoyed with him talking so much, which is kind of true. That really did happen. So in his dream, the way that played out is that he had these turtles that came out of his mouth, and he wanted to give me these turtles. But my basin, is that what you get? Like my washing sink or something wasn't big enough for all these turtles. And so I needed to get a bigger bathtub.
Your what?
My washing, my sink, I
Oh,
guess
your
is what it's
sink.
called.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, my sink wasn't big enough for all the turtles. So anyhow, from this dream, we have this inside joke where he talks a lot, and then he has come to ask permission if he can give me one more turtle, whether that will fit into my sink or not.
Oh, that's cute.
Anyhow,
That's
so
cute.
there's so much. We have an agreement about that.
Well,
So
yeah.
after 8 p.m. I can't take any more turtles.
Oh, that
um,
is funny. Hey, I want to ask you one thing about his language. Like he writes
yeah,
me stuff sometimes, or sends me
yeah,
something else, or he'll say
yeah,
things that are really
yeah.
playing with English, sometimes
Oh
in
boy. Yeah,
rather esoteric ways. So how do you
yeah,
you must have to figure some things out. Uh,
yeah,
you know, because they take
yeah,
an enormous amount of background. I mean, your English is excellent, but Lord,
yeah.
uh,
I know. Yeah.
that rings a bell to you, huh?
Oh boy, does it. Does it.
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's true. And he can, when I don't fully understand, he will make sure to explain in detail.
yeah. I
So
just did a
yeah,
podcast with who said
yeah,
in
yeah.
a and who was sort of a loner. And you know
Uh,
what a ronin is? The
yeah, I do.
the
Yeah,
masterless samurai, right? And
yeah.
somebody who was raised Catholic and really liked it. Oh, I can't remember. All right, I'll fill it in. It was somebody anyway. So he was talking to them, uh, and he called them a Ronin Catholic. He called him a
Mhm,
Ronin Catholic,
mhm, mhm.
and because he was raised in the Roman Catholic Church, but he
Mhm.
said he was a Ronin Catholic, or maybe a Ronin Catholic Buddhist. Um,
Mhm.
and that's the sort of thing he just comes out with all the time. Um,
Yeah,
you know,
absolutely. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, like what, but he's taking his whole, I mean, he's walking his talk there, right? I mean, he's one of his core, I think, insights. And I actually, if I look at his life, the way he tells it or presents it also in his teaching, one of the first things he took on as a practice, even before there were many translations of Buddhist texts, he took on the Lankavatara Sutra as something to practice. And
Oh,
one of the things that's in there is the distinction between the sentence body, the the name body, and the syllable body. And he's
hmm.
actually trained himself to um, listen, to be able to listen simultaneously, and that's completely apparent in what you're pointing out here with the word plays and stuff. He's completely able to listen all the time with three different bodies. And so he, at all times, he listens with a syllable body. And on the syllable body, all of these etymological connections are occurring and weird associations that really aren't happening in the cognitive conceptual sentence body. Well, yeah, that's, I think, where that's coming from. It's that kind of training.
Wow. Wow. Oh,
Mm,
oh, oh, the person he said that to was Chuck Hoy, who's in Santa Fe, and
mm. Okay.
yeah, and spoke very warmly about Baker Roshi uh,
Uh-huh.
in the podcast. Anyway, all right. So you were able to come here because of that visa. Now, where were
Mm-hmm.
you when you came here? Where were you coming from, and what were you doing there?
Okay. Well, I came from okay, we actually have a name crisis, but I'm just going to call us by our new name, from the Zen Buddhist Center Schwarzwald, aka Johanneshof. And that's the Zen Buddhist Practice Center located in the Black Forest in Germany. Actually, I think always wonderfully located in the so-called three country corner,
Mm-hmm.
which is the country corner between Switzerland, France, and then Germany, and the center is in the German corner of,
Mm-hmm.
uh, of that little triangle. Yeah, and so that's the where of where I'm coming from, and then what am I doing there? I am the director and a resident teacher at the center, and it's the place was founded by Baker Roshi. I first found the place. The first time I was there was when I kind of stumbled into it. Well, not really, that's a story, but when I was 17, that's when the first time I visited, and since then I've just been so fully fascinated by the Zen practice, and especially the way I encountered it there. I just really liked the people from the first moment on. It's been really, yeah.
What year was that when you were 17?
That was 99.
99. Oh, were you at the wedding?
Yeah. No, I wasn't, but I was already around when the wedding happened.
Yeah.
My first job was I painted Sophia Baker's baby room before she was born. That was the first thing I did at Johanneshof.
Oh, that's nice. I went to the wedding.
Yeah.
I went to the wedding. That was nice. Yeah, that was great.
Yeah.
So now, how did you said you went there when you were 17? Why did you go there? I mean, what led you to? Did you have a prior interest in Buddhism or practice or meditation or enlightenment or something?
Nah, zero. No, I didn't. What happened is that in Germany at that age, what you do is you start thinking about what do I want to do with my life, because that's the time when you finish the first, like the equivalent of high school. Yeah. And you have to kind of start choosing what you do for college education. And maybe just to put that into perspective, that in Germany is actually a bit more serious of a decision than it is in the US, where you can have these broad first years of college training and you kind of go into all kinds of directions. In Germany, you after you finish high school, you basically choose more or less, at least that's when I was younger, 20 years ago, that was much more the custom. You're kind of setting the tracks for your life at that age.
Yeah.
And so I don't know, there are 10,000 ways to tell the story. I'll tell the medium-long way or shortish way.
Oh, no.
Which is that
any length
you want the long way?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Well, great. Good. Okay. So, what happened for me is I was, faced, like all young kids, I was faced with a basic question of what do I want to do with my life? And I watched my thinking about that question. So I found, I had all these different interests. And then I thought, I could become an astronomer, or I could become a medical doctor, and so forth. So I, went through all of these different ideas of what I could become. And as I watched my thinking about these questions, I realized that every time I tried to answer the question, I felt I was answering it to myself based on what I thought, what other people expected of me.
Yes.
Yeah, and so and that really disturbed me. And I identified that problem, though. I thought, I had at the time, I had these particular people who were very important to me. Like, for instance, my music teacher, she was a person I really admired. So I had this whole already, that's one of the things that's kind of like a little thing throughout my life. My mother tells me this. I had this kind of like from kindergarten on, I always wanted mentors. So I always looked for people in my environment who I felt could teach me something. And then I would build a real relationship with them. And I did this very much with my music teacher, who I liked a lot. And and then I realized, when I was thinking about what do I want to do with my life, I could only think about it in terms of what does she want me to do with it. But unfortunately, I'm not a musical person. I don't have musical talent. So I thought, well, I want to become a pianist, but I can't play the piano. So that's a problem. And I got pretty disturbed when, even after I identified that I was defining myself or even my life through what I thought other people expected of me, what disturbed me was that I couldn't stop. I just couldn't stop.
Yeah.
And I couldn't find. So then I made a little challenge for myself. I even wrote that down in a diary, and I was like, okay, so what do I expect of myself? What do I want to do? And whenever I asked that question, there was just a big, like a black hole. I had no idea. What do I want? There was nothing that appeared in response to that question. I didn't know how to know what I want. And so I at first I thought, well, that'll go away. I just have to kind of ask myself more often, but it didn't go away. And then I at some point I was pretty desperate, because I realized, I did not want to start living a life that's entirely based on what I think other people expect of me. That just seemed way too fragile and way too insubstantial for life choices.
Yeah.
And then I went to when I realized I can't solve the problem, I didn't have the mental skills to solve the problem, I went to talk to my parents about it. And they didn't know what I meant by it. They said, well, but that's normal. Everyone feels that way. They basically said something like that. And and I said, yeah, but I don't want to feel that way. I mean, I need therapy or something. That's sick. That's like, I don't want to have all these thoughts in my head all the time. And I can't stop the thoughts. And they are entirely about, and I always called it at the time, and I still call it that, a third person perspective on myself. It wasn't, that was the real thing. I couldn't have a first person perspective on myself. I always had a third person perspective on myself.
Yeah.
And so I wanted to do therapy around that. And my parents really did not know what to do with that. So what my dad did is he had a colleague who he worked with and who had talked to him about something that's in German called Selbstfindungstrip. It's a translation, the best I can do right now, is finding yourself trip, a trip to find yourself. And so his colleague had done that, and he had talked to my father about it. And so my father went to this guy and said, look, my daughter, I think, wants to find herself. Can you help her? Where can she go if she wants to find herself? And so this colleague came back to my father's with like 20 different brochures of places all over Europe that he had visited, because at the time, everything that wasn't like traditional, German traditional and Christian and so forth, basically was considered a cult. It was not yet the custom for German people to practice meditation or mindfulness. That was all considered esoteric nonsense and cultish and so forth. So what this colleague did is he gave my father these brochures and said, these places, I've all visited them personally, and you can trust them. So just let your daughter choose one. And so he gave me all of these brochures, and he said, well, for your 18th birthday, I will give you this as a present. You can just choose any place. I will pay for the seminar or whatever it is that you choose to do, and I will drive you there. And so then what I looked at them, and all the brochures though were full of promises, right? I mean, every single brochure tried to tell me why this is it, but I didn't have any understanding of how to differentiate a good thing from a bad thing. They were just all commercial.
What sort of places were they?
Yeah, they were all across the esoteric market, like some seminar houses, like various religions though. I remember one Sufi camp.
Yeah.
And one Christian meditation place.
Yeah.
But then a lot of therapeutic places where they would do workshops around, I think at the time that was still the 90s, the self-finding thing, that was a really big deal. Find yourself.
Yeah.
So there would be seminars at certain types of, German hippie version commune spaces where you could do find yourself seminars, therapeutic places. So there was all that, like various completely different types of things.
Yeah.
And I couldn't tell the difference. I didn't even really know the difference between Hinduism and Buddhism, or Sufi. I didn't know what to do with, or Christian mystic. I had no idea. And so what I did, being kind of impatient and not wanting to do research on each of them, and Google wasn't a thing yet, so how would I? So I just put them all in front of me, and I closed my eyes, and I thought to myself, okay, if intuition exists, it has to work now. So I closed my eyes and I pulled out a brochure, and it was Johanneshof, the Buddhist study center Johanneshof.
Wow.
And so I looked at it and I immediately fell in love with it. And you know why? It was the only brochure that didn't make a single promise. No promise. It was just black and white. It just gave me a title, dates, the location, and the price. That's all it said. No promises, nothing. Almost as if they didn't want any people. And so then I chose a program. And then I chose a program that was called Work Weeks. That was, I think, a pretty unusual choice for a 17-year-old, but that's what I did. That's where I went. Work Week just happened to be in my Easter vacation, which fit perfectly into my school schedule and so forth. So
good choice.
Went to the Buddhist Study Center for the Work Week.
Yeah. I think that would be the best choice, because then you really get to know people. That's great. Wow. And so, where were you coming from? Where in Germany?
Northern Germany, a little south of Hamburg.
And so you went there in '99, and what was it like? What was the work week like?
Terrible. Terrible. I mean, like the opposite of what you're looking for when you're a teenager. It's like, terrible is it's almost too small a word. I arrived there. Let me actually tell you it was pretty absurd in some ways. So my parents drove me all the way across the country, right? That was like a 9-hour drive.
Yeah.
And they dropped me off in the parking lot. And for Johanneshof too, Johanneshof at the time was still pretty small. It only got founded in '96. So it didn't exist for very long yet. And Gerald and Gisela, who they were running the place. Baker Roshi wasn't there at the time when I first arrived there. And but Johanneshof, being also so new, they had no experience with teenagers coming. That never had happened really before.
Oh.
And so they didn't quite know what to do with me. And they sent the person out to pick me up from the parking lot, who they thought was the most normal amongst them. It was Frank.
Who? Oh, it was Frank?
And Frank, yeah. And he introduced himself to my parents and so forth. That all went fine. And then he brought me inside the house. It was all pretty dark, but the first thing I remember, my very first impression was the strong and really captivating kind of like mystic smell of incense that I've never forgotten. And every time still, even now when I, after like, 23 years, when I return, when I enter Johanneshof, I haven't been there for some while. First thing I have that, I smell that smell, and it just immediately makes me feel at home in a really fundamental sense. So, yeah. So, okay. So Frank picked me up from the car, and since, you know, like from how I've told the story, you may have gathered by now, I didn't like intentionally choose Buddhism or meditation. Like I had no idea what I was getting myself into.
Yeah.
And so he asked, as we were walking inside, he asked, so Nicole, do you have any experience in sitting? And I didn't know that sitting was like a euphemism for meditation. I just thought he meant sitting. And so, but I thought, well, okay, this is a pretty strange place, so I'm just going to respond honestly. And I thought, well, I said to him, yes, Mr. Frank, I go to school and we sit there quite a bit. And then also when I do my homework at home, I also sit.
That is
and he said,
great.
no, but yeah, that's like my level of understanding and knowledge with which I first
wow, that is
play.
terrific.
And so he said, oh no, I mean meditation. Have you ever meditated before? And I said, no, I've never done that before. And then I asked, but do you do that here? And he said, oh yeah, we meditate a lot. And I said, okay. So then he said, do you want me to give you a meditation instruction? I said, sure, yeah. And so he gave me my first meditation instruction. That's how that all started. And yeah, I think the most I'm still answering a question. What was it like? So
well, I have
really
one
small.
question.
Yeah.
Did he invite your parents in?
You know, he didn't.
That seems terribly rude to me.
I know what they did. At least I don't recall that exactly. They may have come into the entrance space. I don't think they were led through the house or anything. I don't think so, but I may be wrong. But what they did is they were pretty worried. Like, it was a strange place, let me tell you. It was it was a strange place. And so they secretly booked a room in the Waldheim, which you may know, David. I think you may have stayed there, actually. The Waldheim is not far from Johanneshof. It's this pension. And they stayed there for like 4 days, but secretly. I didn't know about it.
Oh.
And from the balcony of that place, they could see Johanneshof. So they kept watching, like, what was happening at the house, if people seemed okay and so forth. And then they also went around town, like the bakery and the little supermarket and so forth. And they kept asking people, so what about that place, Johanneshof, these Buddhists, what are they doing and are they okay? And they would tell them that they just dropped their daughter off there and they were a little worried. But all the people in town really liked Gerald and Gisela.
Uh-huh.
And so they only told them good things about Johannes. Oh, you know, you can feel good about that. They are great people. They are very quiet and they work a lot. They have, and they get up very early in the morning and so forth. So felt good.
That's good.
And then my parents came before they drove all the way back to northern Germany. They suddenly dropped in at Johanneshof, and I was very surprised. And also very tempted to just go back with them because I hated the 4:30 wake up. But I didn't. I decided, no, I'm going to do this. It was a 2-week stay that I had signed up for, and I was committed to doing it. And so I stayed. But yeah, that's when that I remember, because then they did come in and I showed them around a little bit. At that time.
That's good.
Yeah.
Yeah, you know, let me say one thing real quick. My Skype can just hang up without it.
Okay.
So I just call it. Just wait. I'll call you right back.
Sure.
You know, when somebody arrives with their parents, the most important thing is not to pay attention to them, but their parents. You know what I mean?
That's true.
You want to
That's
make
true.
the
Yeah.
parents feel comfortable.
That's true.
They're
Yeah.
worried about
No,
their
they did.
children.
Because
And you
yeah,
want to
they
be
did not
normal. You
yet
want
have
to
that
act
down.
normal, you know?
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah. Yeah.
were you there when Balthasar Lohmeyer drove me there? He went and picked me up at Felsentor, and I stayed with him in Zurich. And also, we spent time with Baker Roshi in Zurich, and they got along really well. He's a therapist and a neurologist. And he was he studied for many years with Lassalle, a German Zen teacher who studied in
Yeah.
Kamakura.
Yeah.
Anyway,
Yeah.
Balthazar is very critical and very
Mhm.
cynical.
Mhm.
And he thought Felsentor was a little precious. Uh,
Mhm.
um, but that was just his take. I like Felsentor. But so he drove me there in his Mercedes convertible sports car, which was nice. Uh, and we had lunch
Mhm.
and showed him around, and we talked, and he had to go. And you know what he said to me in the parking lot? He said, he said, I really like this place. The people here are normal.
Yeah. 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 I do kind of remember that. That rings a bell. I think that was 2006 when you came, right?
No, no, that was recently.
Oh, it was recently. Okay. No,
Yeah,
then,
that was
well, you
five
came again
years
in,
ago.
yeah.
That was for
Oh,
Baker Roshi's
2016.
80th
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
birthday. And
Yeah,
he and
exactly.
I went and had lunch with Vanya in Luzerne,
Mm,
and Vanya took us
mm,
to Felsentor, and that was his first time to go to Felsentor. And then
uh-huh.
we were up there, and then he, and he said, it's time to go. And I said, I'm going to stay for a couple of days. And
Mm.
so, and you know, Vanya gave him his apartment in Lucerne. He had
Mm,
an extra apartment to, you know, do some work. And so we got together
mm.
when I came out. Anyway, all right. So back to your parents. So you didn't leave with them.
No. Yeah.
So, but
Yeah, yeah.
keep going.
Go
You're
ahead.
there for how long are you there for? A week? Uh, two
For
weeks?
2 weeks.
2 weeks.
2 weeks, yeah.
All right.
Mm-hmm.
So we've
Yeah.
gotten through the first 4 days.
That's right. That's right. So, yeah, it was a real culture shock for me. Like nothing was familiar in that whole place. The way they eat chopsticks? You kidding me? And then, this
Wait,
meditation
wait.
itself,
You had to eat with chopsticks? They had no
yeah,
alternative?
yeah. No, we ate orioki. No alternative.
Oh, it was
I had never even
orioki.
seen chop. I mean, I come from a German village, a farm. I had never even seen chopsticks. And also, I only ate prior to my arrival at Johanneshof. I had a very funny diet. I only ate pancakes. Pancakes. It was the only thing I'd eat.
Oh my
Pancakes
God.
and yeah, no, it was a pretty unhealthy diet. But I don't know. It was a whole different story. But
God.
I didn't eat anything, right? And so there, I had to eat that really strange shiitake, algae, the Japanese food with chopsticks, and so I mean that was just the pinnacle of how strange everything was for me. And what's pretty funny looking back now is that because everything was so strange, the smell, the way people talked, getting up so early, and the still sitting, the orioki, everything. I just started having my own little, how children explain the world to themselves, like they make their own little working hypothesis about what's happening in the world, and
Yeah.
that can be pretty off. And I had various kinds of funny hypothesis of how I tried to explain to myself what was happening. And only over the years did I demystify some of them. It took me a long time to get the hang of what was really going on. But yeah, so I tried to kind of I was in a real culture shock. Everything seemed strange, and it was very difficult to sit still like that. I was in horrible pain, and I but at the same time, it was in a very, in a way I could not grasp. It felt like it was exactly what I needed to do. And that was a big dissonance in my experience, but I clearly took note of it. You know, I felt the dissonance between everything is difficult for me, everything is painful. And at the same time, I felt it was exactly what I needed to do. And so, yeah, I was living that huge stretch, you know, inside my mental physical continuum. And I, to make it through the days, I had a little inside my closet, inside my closet. I first had a little calendar where I counted the days, how long I'd still have to stay. But then the days just were too big a unit. So I started counting the hours. And I made a little check mark for every hour that I managed to survive.
Oh.
And
I understand that. I do that now. I do that sort of thing now. I'll break it down, and not just that. I'll figure out the percentage, what percentage I'm through, and then I'll figure out the fraction.
Oh, that's fantastic! And do you make a little pie chart with it, and then you can
in my mind, only in my mind.
Yeah. There we go. Finally, somebody understands. Yeah, no, that was totally my way to survive. Otherwise, I could not have made it. I had to break it down into manageable units.
Yeah, yeah, I understand. That's cool. That's cool. Well, I've never gotten over that. Sometimes I don't do it on purpose, just for nothing to be happening. But I'll count steps. I'll count how many steps it is from here to the, it's about 2,500 steps. That's like a mile to a grocery store I go to. And stuff like that. I count when I swim. I count the strokes. But then I will not count the strokes to have that experience too. But it's very hard for me to stop counting. I love counting because it takes the place of thinking random thoughts somewhat, you know?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. And that's also what happened for me. And just to finish that part, maybe that's what happened to me in Zazen. So I had really the meditation instruction that I got when I first arrived there was like very minimalistic, let's call it that. It was just so I wouldn't hurt myself too badly while sitting, but there was no instruction on what to do whatsoever. Not even the breath counting, nothing. I mean, they just put me down there, and they were serious at the time. Like now we are much more relaxed and more much more leeway for newcomers. Yeah. But then it was like, you be in the Zendo. It's awfully strict. You be in the Zendo at 4:20. If you're late, you stay outside the door.
Yeah.
And you sit still, no movement at all. Yeah. And that's all I knew.
What month was this?
What month?
Yeah.
It was April.
So what was it was sort of cool then in April, right?
Yeah, it was cold. It was really cold. Yeah. Exactly.
What's the altitude there?
1,000 meters.
Yeah, 3,000.
960.
A little over 3,000 feet. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what about the work? What work did you do, and how was that?
Yeah, as I said, my first job and the one I really enjoyed was painting Sophia Baker's little baby room.
Oh.
That was one job I had. So it was the work week was about renovations, and I wasn't very skilled at anything. So they put me on cutting vegetables. That was one of the things I did, and then a lot of painting. Yeah, I painted things white.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Yeah, and this was in 1999?
Yeah.
Oh. Huh. And was Sophia born yet?
I wonder, actually. She may have either been just born. She hadn't, like that room that I painted, she had never been in there. So she may have been born, but if she was, I actually think she was probably born in March. Like her birthday is in March, right? Yeah, in March. And so she may have been born like that month, I do know that they hadn't been to Johanneshof with her. Nobody had seen the baby yet. And I didn't know, like, I had no conception of, that was awesome, by the way. Like, again, I was trying to explain the world to myself in the midst of this culture shock, and everything was strange, right?
Yeah.
So I kept hearing the word Baker Roshi or something like that, but I didn't know if it was a thing or a mystical figure or a book or a person. Like, I just had no idea, but I kept hearing like that being referenced, a Baker Roshi.
Yeah.
At first I had some wild hypothesis that it was a mystical plant. I think because the word Roshi reminded me of rose, so I somehow thought it was a mystical plant.
Right.
Yeah. So so I didn't have a conception, but I knew there was a Baker Roshi and something to do with a baby. And so I did pick up that there was a baby that nobody had seen yet. Yeah. So that was my relationship with Sophia. Yeah.
Now, what year was this?
It must have been 99, but I'm trying to think if that's possible.
Oh, that's when they got married.
Then it may have been, you know what, I think what's going on is I had the brochure of 99, because that I remember clearly. My brochure was of 99, but maybe the year was 2000.
I think the year was definitely 2000.
Yeah, that makes sense, because the brochure was 99 and the year that I came there was 2000. That would make sense.
Yeah, and what year were you born?
I was born in 81, but then I was already 18.
So you're 40?
I'm 39 now. Yeah.
Oh, you look younger than that.
I know. Yeah.
Oh,
but
I
I
didn't
did
know
change
you were that
recently
old.
quite a bit, actually. No. But the last like 2 or 3 years, I've noticed distinctly I look more like a middle-aged woman now.
Yes,
I
that
used
happens.
to look much younger.
That happens. Our bodies change.
No, my body changed drastically. Really, it was a big change throughout the last 1.5 years or so. I've been really concerned about that, because my body changed so much during the last 1.5 years.
How?
It changed shape somehow. I mean, first of all, my metabolism changed big time. I never used to gain weight much, but now I really have to be careful with what I eat. I easily gain weight, so I'm heavier for one thing, but also my whole body shape has changed in some funny way, and also I'm like, things start hurting. My joints, like my knees especially, and my hips, they all hurt. So I have to do regular yoga and I have to jog and so forth. Otherwise, I am quickly in bad shape, and that never used to be the case before.
Have you looked at your bone density and calcium and stuff like that?
Nah, I've never done that. I probably should, though.
Yeah, that's always a good thing to do. Katrinka's got really good bone density, and that's good. But, that's a common problem women have. And I don't really know anything about it. So, so what happened then? After this 2 weeks of suffering.
After those 2 weeks, yeah. Well, the time at Johanneshof did profoundly impress me, and after I was finished, all the difficulty was completely worth it, because it really did open my my whole system to an experience of real stillness. And so I suddenly had this taste, and so that stayed with me, and I started sitting regularly, just on my own. But of course, then I went back I was still in high school, so that's the first thing. I just finished high school. It was another, I don't know, year or so of high school left at the time.
Mm-hmm.
And then I decided, because the experience I had there was actually over time really unfolded in a way that I started feeling this longing to sit in the Zendo again and stuff like that. So I decided after high school, and also besides, since I still couldn't answer the question, what do I really want to do with my life? So I thought, well, how about I do know that I want to be able to answer that question. That's something I really want. So I thought Johanneshof was a good place for me to really get a different kind of feeling. So I thought to myself, why don't I just not make a decision about, what to study and so forth for now, but just take a year off after high school.
Yes.
And I thought what I wanted to do was a world trip. I wanted to just travel. And I thought my first destination ought to be Johanneshof.
Yeah.
So I called them up and I asked if I could go back, and I didn't commit exactly for how long. I thought at least a week, but maybe I'll stay longer. And so I got there and I liked it so much. And that's also when I met Baker Roshi for the first time. So that was the second time when I returned. And but it took me forever to recognize that he was a teacher there. He never presented himself as a teacher at first. It was only when he took me to a seminar all the way up to Münster, which we had a 4-hour drive in the car with Marie-Louise and Sophia together and so forth. And only when we arrived in Münster, and all I knew was that there was going to be some seminar, and then suddenly he appeared on the platform. That's when I recognized that he was the teacher and that he was the Baker Roshi, which I originally thought was the mystical plant. That's when I started putting things together.
Oh.
So, yeah. Yeah. And, I'm pretty slow with these things, but anyhow. So, where was I? Yeah. When I returned, I really liked him and I really liked the teaching. And so I decided to stay. And I kind of canceled my world trip and just stayed for the year at Johanneshof. I did visit my parents back and forth, but I basically for that full year, I stayed at Johanneshof. And during that year, I really got a lot of practice time in. Like I said, that year was crazy. I sat 5 sessions in that year.
Oh my God.
And I even did my first practice. Yeah, no, every other month a session.
Oh,
and,
I lived next door to a Rinzai temple that did that in Japan. I didn't do it. I just go over and sit zazen in the morning. But they did. They did one every month. I think they do a Dai session, or maybe they called it O session and a Ko session, a big one and a small one.
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you all do that now?
No, we kind of changed our schedule. I think there was so many sessions because that was also the year when I did my first practice period in Crestone.
Yeah.
And so I got, and Johanneshof had 4 sessions at the time. So I did all the 4 sessions that were happening at Johanneshof, but plus the Crestone session. And somehow that made it so many. Yeah.
Wait a minute. So in the 1 year after you graduated from high school, now what are you 18 years old now, or 19?
No, now I must be more like 20 or.
Yeah, okay, 20, you're 20 now.
21 maybe. Yeah,
All right, 21. So you're there. Well, wait a minute. If it's the year after high school, you're not going to be 21.
I was, because I first of all, I started school late. So I was always older than the other kids. And also I did one exchange student year in Oregon in 10th grade.
In Oregon?
That didn't count.
Did you say in Oregon?
In Oregon, yeah.
Where in Oregon?
Canyonville.
I don't know that. Huh, far out.
It's near Roseburg. You might know Roseburg.
Oh, you know Katrinka would. She has a son that lives there. And,
okay.
I've spent a little time in there and I've driven through it. So, we used to go to Bend. She had a son.
Yeah.
He lived in Bend.
Yeah.
But now he lives on the coast in a really small place called Bandon. So that's great. So you were there. But so you were at Johanneshof, and then you went to Crestone for how long at Crestone?
For 3 months, for exactly the time of the practice period.
Oh, and that would be like in 2002 or something?
Yeah, either 2 or 3.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Did I meet you then?
In Crestone. No, that was the year when I was there. It was the year when Baker Roshi had cancer, and he wasn't at the practice period in Crestone. And I don't think I met you then. I think I met you first in 2006 when you came to Johanneshof.
I've never lived at Crestone, but I've gone there for a week and 2 weeks and 2 days and 1 day, and anytime I was anywhere
but
near
that was
there,
much later.
I go there.
Yeah.
Wow. So you'd had quite a full experience in that year. Well, what happened after that? And well, is there anything you want to say about that year?
Oh boy, yeah, that year was, I mean, there's so much I could say about that. That year changed my life. It was, I mean, first of all, that was the year when, well, Baker Roshi, first of all, that's when I met him, right? And it was him really who it was his teaching and the experience of Zazen that really made me want to take this much more seriously, not just as an in-between thing until I really figure out what I want to do with my life, but as a real something that I could do with my life even.
Yeah.
And so Baker Roshi I was still, even though I was at that time 20-ish or so, that still made me pretty young. And Roshi was a little worried about that. That's something I learned much later from somebody who lived from Akash actually, who lived at Johanneshof at the time. Akash told me much later, he said in staff meetings, Baker Roshi would a couple times or so bring up whether it's even okay, whether people thought it was okay for me to be at Johanneshof because he felt I was just too young. And so one thing he did is he felt, but he basically, he had no real big doubt about that. He felt it seemed to be useful for me. But he did decide that if he's going to let me stay there, he wanted to personally make sure that I was going to be okay. And that, it wasn't too, I think he could probably see more than I could, I guess, at the time. That year was, I don't even know exactly how to describe that. It's a little bit like there are different phases, I think, in a person's life when you're pretty open to things, like to transformative, I don't know, not just experiences, but more like when your life is really up for grabs a little bit.
Yeah.
And I was definitely at such a point. My life was up for grabs. I wasn't a very happy person, for one thing, and I wasn't. The way I was put together psychologically was somewhat fragile. I would think, if I look back, try to explore really what was happening there. I think I was pretty vulnerable and sensitive, and at the same time with a pretty strong longing to really get to a point in my life. I mean, I wanted stability, but not fake stability. I wanted real stability. Like what can you actually rely on? I mean, everything seems so relative. What can you actually rely on? If you're going to make life choices, where do they come from? It was still that kind of question with some, I don't know, real energy in it. And so Roshi decided to kind of like he kept me, in German we would say something like he kept me a little bit under his wings. He kind of made sure I was okay. And that's also how he invited me to the practice period in Crestone, not knowing at the time that he was going to have cancer and not knowing that he wouldn't be there.
Yeah, he had prostate cancer.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. So originally I think his feeling was, and I'm telling you that because that really did make a difference. I mean, doing the practice period made a huge difference in my life choices. But also, I don't know. I guess that's why I'm telling you. And so Roshi, I think at the time felt something like he wanted to be sure I was okay, and so he kind of wanted me to be where he was teaching.
Yeah.
So he thought it'd be good. He was half the year at Johanneshof, and then he thought, well, it would probably be good for her if she did a practice period in Creston. Okay, so he invited me to do that, and at first I said no, but then I said yes after a while. And that was a very important experience for me, the practice period. I decided during that time, I felt I don't ever want to do anything else with my life. But I also wanted to, I mean, in some really fundamental sense, that's what I felt. But I thought, again, I was 21 or so. And I thought, what I don't want is if you're going to live such an unusual life, kind of outside the system, and they didn't really at the time, and still now even, we only pay people minimal life support, just a monk's stipend, and in Creston sometimes we can't afford much of anything except enough money for toothpaste and stuff. So I thought, well, I don't want to, that's such an unusual life, and I may not have the kinds of securities that I would have if I lived a regular social life. So I thought what I didn't want is, I thought to myself, if I'm going to be serious about this, I want to, at all times, I want to feel that it's a free choice. I don't want to get into a situation where I'm dependent on the center, where suddenly, I wake up with 35 and I realize, well, now I don't know, I can't do anything else. I haven't learned anything.
Right.
So I wanted for practice to always be a free choice. And so therefore, I decided that after the year was finished, I decided to study. But I wanted to study something that had something to do with Zen.
Yeah.
And then again, through a bunch of what I would call coincidence and, funny circumstances, I ended up finding the University of Oldenburg, which had two professors that were very close with Baker Roshi.
Huh.
And so they ended up really vouching for me throughout the entire time that I studied. I studied psychology, and that fit well, just in terms of the topic. And I could do, during my studies in Oldenburg, I could basically be at Johanneshof as much as I wanted.
Oh,
so
is it nearby? I don't know where it is.
No, it's very far away, but usually you have attendance obligations and so forth. And these two professors, they just helped me that I could I could make the Johanneshof time partly count for my degree, which was a kind of funny thing that was very unusual.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but anyhow, they really supported me in practicing Zen and keeping that as the main focus in my life. And so I could do both. I could have it both at the time I studied, and I finished my degree and so forth. And at the same time, I was able to really be at Johanneshof quite a bit during those years.
Oh.
And as soon as I finished studying, I left and moved to Creston.
So you got a what we call in America like a bachelor's degree.
Yeah, no, a diploma is the equivalent of a master's. It was a 4-year program.
Oh, you said it's more like a master's?
Yeah, diploma is the equivalent of a master's.
Uh-huh. Well, that's smart move. And that, what you said there about, it seems to me you were extremely farsighted in, first deciding, you wanted to find out what you, and first noticing you were doing you were trying to figure out what other people wanted. Then thinking, I don't want to wake up 35 years old and be dependent on this place. Boy, is that a smart thing to think. And, I had a monk in Japan, a Spanish monk, who's, in his 60s. But he's sort of like, who is it? Eeyore, the donkey in Winnie the Pooh, was always like complaining or something. He was that way. He was always complaining. But I'd say, hey, how's it going? Whatever his name is. I saw him 7 years ago there. And he went, oh, I've wasted my whole life. I haven't learned anything. I've spent, I've spent 30 years here, and I can't do anything. I can't go back. I don't know anything. I just
yeah, It's like when you're trapped like that, and the thing is, and I really am still very grateful to my younger self that I had that thought, because the thing is that it can become a self-fulfilling prophecy, I find, because if Dharma practice isn't done from a point of inner and even outer freedom that translates into inner freedom, if it's not done from a point of freedom, then somehow I think it's very easy for one to feel the kind of pressure that doesn't allow you to do it in a satisfying way anymore. You become a bit of a victim.
Yeah.
In the middle of a situation that you've chosen.
Yeah.
And so that at some point you chose, but now you no longer feel that it was a choice. So then it's a bit of a victim situation. And when that's the case, that basic position, first of all, it's very difficult to get out of. I see it in practitioners all over the place. I've seen so many centers at this point.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And so it's very difficult to get out of. And also it blocks the real power of Zazen practice, or of Dharma practice. It blocks it. So that's from that point of view, and that I wouldn't have known at the time, like to that extent and in its thoroughness, but I did have an intuition that it wasn't going to be good if I was in a dependency situation.
Can you elaborate on this blocking?
The blocking is, I mean, I am much of my work, or I don't know, practice and interest now is to explore what is the basic state of mind, what are the conditions. And conditions, I mean conditions in one's life, but more so the inner conditions. So like, say, the attitudes, mental postures that are conducive to practice.
Mm-hmm.
Now, and there are a few, I'm just going to call them postures that oftentimes are so ingrained in us that we don't even notice them as distinct postures anymore. Like, for instance, the posture or the attitude, which is future-oriented. And future-oriented in the sense of expectations.
Yes.
This is what it should be like. We don't even see it as something we are bringing to the situation anymore, because it's just how we look at the situation in the first place. This is what it should be like. And we have a hard time seeing things for what they are, because we can only see how they either are or aren't what they should be like. So that's, I don't know if that became clear, but that's the kind of thing I mean when I say oftentimes implicitly held inner assumption and posture. So I think another one is, so that kind of posture blocks practice, what Dharma practice is about, which say it's about, one way to talk about it at least is to say it's about opening body and mind to be present, within one's immediate circumstance and within one's wider life in a particular way, with real openness, for instance. I don't know. You can look at many qualities that can flow from that, but with warmth or whatever. So it's about being present in a particular way. And what I am exploring so much is what are the, especially the implicit ones that I'm interested in, what are the implicit inner conditions, the implicit views, implicit attitudes that do not allow for the simple appreciation and joy of Dharma practice to really unfold in one's life. Because see, I think that's the thing. Dharma practice, a life in the Dharma, doesn't offer us much, except the joy that comes from within it, right? I mean, it's like you don't get money for it usually. You have a kind of like, you have a pretty restricted life compared to the kind of freedom that you have in a normal Western society. You live always in a schedule. You live in a community. You eat what people tell you need to eat and when they tell you. So there are all these, and again, you don't have all the rewards that a lay life offers, which are kind of great and very pleasant. You don't, so much of that you have sacrificed. And for what? Really just the kind of joy that that can come but doesn't automatically and doesn't always come from practice. It comes from practice when you practice with a certain inner freedom, I think. Mm-hmm. At least that's one of the conditions in my way of exploring this. So, and that's where I'm trying to get, is that this is what I'm trying to say is based on an observation that when a person is in what I called before a victim position, feeling that I have to do this, that is a contraindication. That's what I mean with blocking.
Yes.
That very position is what may not so easily allow for the joy of being there, just the mere joy of being there. It may get blocked by feeling I have to be there. And I give you a very simple example. I loved playing table tennis as a child. I played like all my life when I started when I was 3 years old, basically. My whole family played table tennis. And I loved it. I loved it every time. And I wanted to do nothing but play table tennis. But then I entered a team, and we suddenly had these competitive games. And so suddenly I had to show up at such and such a time because it was a competition. I had to be there and play table tennis. The moment I had to be there, and I was only, at the time, I was only 8 or 9 or something. And I remember I threw a fit. I threw my table tennis, what do you call it, racket?
Yeah, paddle.
Yeah.
Paddle.
Yeah, the paddle. I threw the paddle against the wall, and I said to him, "No, I don't want to play. I hate playing." And that kind of stayed with me, even as a kid, because it was the first time I ever said I hate playing. And the only reason was because I suddenly had to.
Yeah. What age were you? What age were you?
That was 9, 8 or 9 or something.
Yeah. I agree. Well, you know, a lot of people love competition, but I don't. And we had a ping pong table, and I loved playing ping pong. And I played tennis, you know, and when I've played tennis here, I got to where I wouldn't play games anymore. We just hit. I really don't like competition.
Yeah.
And in doubles.
Exactly, yeah.
Now, we'd play doubles. What we'd do is we'd play one game and then rotate so that we were only playing, each game was isolated. And everybody liked that. It just made it so much more relaxed and fun. And anyway, I certainly appreciate that. But a lot of people are very competitive and only will enjoy it if they can be playing for competition.
That's right, yeah. It's a different mindset.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, exactly. But I think for Dharma practice, it just doesn't work. Neither the competitive mindset nor the I have to mindset.
Right.
I think there are some examples. I should, I have to, none of these mindsets really work for the kind of experience that Dharma practice wants to open us into.
Yeah. Suzuki Roshi thought one of the big problems that he experienced with Westerners, and I'd say especially Western men, was a competitiveness.
Yeah, I get that.
And, you know, people are always quoting him saying moss was growing on the branches of Japanese Zen and all that. Well, he also said once, you know, sort of fed up with the way people were relating, he said, you know, there's a better way. It's the Japanese way. And it's called, you know, cooperation. And Hoitsu once said to me, his son, who is, of course.
Mm. Oh, yeah.
He
Yeah.
said, yeah, the American way to practice Zen is my way. Yeah, and my way is a very famous song in Japan. You go in any of the
Yeah.
karaoke places, they're singing my way. Oh, and if I never hear it again, I'll be happy. And he said, but in Japan, we enter the stream of Buddhism. I thought that was such a nice way to put it. Um, So how
That's
many years
good, yeah.
were you at Crestone? You were there a long time.
Yeah, I was there, all in all for 5 years, but that was like spread out. Really, the big chunk of time was from 2008, end of 2008 though, to 2013. So that's actually 4.5 years in a row, something like that.
Ah, yeah, yeah. And have you pretty much only lived at Crestone and Johanneshof since then?
Only.
Only.
Yeah, nothing else.
And what about your relationship with your parents? Have they, are they, what, tell me.
Well, they, during the time when I was in Crestone, which that was still relatively shortly after I had finished university, the way I experienced that is they always held some kind of motto of they wanted their children to do what makes them happy. So they didn't have really any preconceived ideas of what I should be or something. At the same time, I had an experience of I did kind of, I think, challenge their values or their ideas about what does make a person happy.
Right.
For my mother, it's family big time. And for my father, I think one of the big values I see in him that he upholds is independence. So they were seeing me steering into a life that was pretty difficult to make work with a family, and also that wasn't exactly independence oriented. So it was a little bit, I remember the first couple of years or so that I was in Crestone, I had almost nothing to talk to them about. That was pretty painful. So I didn't have much contact with them, but it was always totally supportive, loving, and warm, completely warm. It was just a little bit like, geez, what is this kid doing there? And I had a shaved head and so forth. So that was a lot for them to process.
Do you have a shaved head now?
No, I don't. Do
you plan to shave your head?
Sorry. No, I've decided not to do that anymore.
Good.
Yeah.
I really think good.
I had in 2013, let me tell you about the shaved head thing. That was a big deal for me. In 2013, I had a crisis with Zen because I couldn't find any, at least not for me, any feminine role models. I just, of course there were women practicing Zen, but I just couldn't really find women that I profoundly felt, that's the kind of person I want to be, which is of course a high statement, but still I couldn't. And so that I more and more, and I couldn't express myself as a woman in the kind of Zen, the way I was learning it. Baker Roshi is a strong male figure in spite of everything he claims. He still thinks, I think, that he's developing his feminine side, but nobody, I don't think anyone agrees. And the people around me, they were all men. I just lived for years and years, especially in Crestone, with only men. And so I don't know, it turned into a crisis. And I had this shaved head, and I didn't really feel like a woman anymore. Inside myself, I was noticing how anything that could be called an experience of femininity, it was like a dry branch or something. It was just kind of drying up, and it felt like it was dying. And so I felt torn, and I literally thought, and it became clearer and clearer to me over a couple of years, I felt I basically had to decide between, I had to decide whether I was going to be a woman or whether I was going to be a Zen practitioner. It seemed pretty clear to me, you can't be both. So, and that was terrible because all my loyalties at that point already were entirely, my whole identity was a Zen practitioner. So I felt, I can't, that I can't give up. So I'm going to have to give up being a woman in some inner sense, of course. I mean, this is all like metaphoric and on a feeling level. But that's what that was. And then eventually I had nightmares. I remember that, like for 3 months or so in a row, I had nightmares and nightmares. I don't know, all related to what it means to be a woman and how the woman in me was dying and stuff like that. And then eventually I woke up one morning and I decided, no, I can't. The thing is, I don't have a choice here. It's not like I can decide. The question is not, do I want to be a woman or do I want to be a Zen practitioner? The thing is, I am a woman. And if I can't make that work with how I understand Zen practice, then I'm just going to have to not practice. Then Zen practice has either to become wider, or my Zen practice has to become wider, or I have to stop living in the monastery, and I have to find some other way of expressing what Zen practice means to me. So from that moment on, when I decided I am a woman already, so there's no choice here. From then on, I started exploring things from a completely different angle. And what I found, I mean, to me, shockingly, was that nobody was in my way. Nobody. And I started letting my hair grow. That was the first step. I just wanted to look like a woman, first of all. And some people started to mistake me. That's how the crisis started too. People started mistaking me for a man, for a young man.
Yeah.
They kept addressing me with sir and so forth, and I hated that.
I can imagine. Yeah.
Yeah. It's not nice if you're like a 27-year-old woman and looking for a partner and you're called sir. It's like, wait, I think I see the problem. Anyhow, so I started letting my hair grow. And at first, Baker Roshi teased me a little bit because in our Sangha at the time, it was still we still held that there was nobody yet who had grown their hair while also being ordained. And so he teased me a little bit. But when he felt, and that I was impressed with, he said, don't you want to shave your head again? And then I said, no, I don't want to. And then he said, okay. And that was it. There was no resistance whatsoever. And I think at some point he started seeing what I was doing, which was I was really exploring, as I said before, from a different angle. I had decided to be a woman, and now I was going to make Zen practice work for me as a woman. And boy, he and everyone around me was so fully supportive, no problem whatsoever. And so so everything was fine. But it took me a while to get there.
Yeah. Well, you see, what you keep saying is that you run into what I'm supposed to do versus what feels right for me,
Exactly.
And
Still
I think,
the same topic.
Yeah, that's a problem when, and you've already stated this in another way, when people practice with an idea of doing what they're supposed to do. Now, I think at first, that can make sense, right?
Yeah.
But after a while, you can't just do things because you're supposed to be doing them. Well, you can, but I think the higher road is leaving that supposed to behind, or having it mixed, a reasonable. You can't just leave it completely behind, and then you'll be breaking all the laws and be a sociopath or something. But all right, have it in balance, let's say.
Well, you're not caught by it so much.
Yeah, not caught. At
least that's my feeling now. I've really, since as you perfectly correctly, I think, identified, that is so much of what my, first of all initial, but then as you can see, pretty far throughout my life, that was a real life topic, that whole negotiation between what am I supposed to be and what's really true for me and so forth.
Yeah.
And so by now I feel, since that was such a big thing in my life and practice, not just in my psychology, but almost all the way down, I could do a whole thing about that, all the way down to a cellular level. I mean, physiologically, I feel like it's a different kind of physiology now. If you're, I mean, I guess a metaphoric way to speak about that is when you feel centered, or when you feel you're in your power. And so these things relate. When I feel centered and in my power, I automatically am in accord with what's true for me. And so then I can choose I can see, I would want to have, as a practitioner, I want to have the radar for what's expected, because it's also a way of being compassionate and being in accord with others. So, what's expected and why is it expected?
Yeah.
So I would want to negotiate that field of seeing what's expected, then understanding the reasons for it, and then having the freedom to make a reasonable choice.
Yeah.
Like that. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah. So now you said early in this discussion that in the end of life project, or and
yeah.
it's important for people to have wills. I know I have friends whose mainly father would die, and it screwed everybody up that they didn't have a will, and they lost a lot of money because of it and stuff like that. So the end of life project can begin when you're younger. You don't need to obsess about it, but it seems important to me. But you said the most important thing was the book, but I beg to differ with you. I would say the most important thing was who is he turning Dharma Sangha over to?
Yeah.
Who are his Dharma heirs?
Yeah. Yeah.
Can we talk about that?
We can talk about that, sure.
Yeah, I mean, is that secret?
No.
Because I know.
Oh, you may not be
I do know.
You know, right?
Yeah.
No, he's made it public. So he just, and that was part of his crisis episode in November. He wrote legally, even notarized letters to both boards, and he sent out a public letter to both mailing lists. And he appointed me as his main successor for both centers, knowing that, real Sangha transmission, and he can, obviously it's important to appoint a teaching successor, but then also there needs to be institutional succession. And so that's still something that we're working on to make it a bit of a wider, and like having more people involved in carrying the teaching onward. But he did announce me as his main teaching successor.
And the backup?
The backup right now is the so-called Abbott's Council, and that seems to be also the widest backup. I mean, the obvious person as a backup is Paul Rosenblum Roshi.
Well, he did mention Paul in those letters.
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah.
So that would be a personal, like one person as a backup. However, with Paul's Ryutan Roshi's living situation, health, and being in California and so forth, if there was a backup needed, the good thing is that we have formed this now really strong group called the Abbott's Council, which consists of Gerald Weishede Roshi and Ravi.
Who?
Gerald.
Oh, Gerhard, yeah.
Gerald Weishede. Yeah. Gerald Weishede. So he's part of the Abbott's Council, and then Ravi Welch Sensei. And then it's myself and Baker Roshi and Ryutan Paul Rosenblum Roshi. So the immediate, if there was a backup needed, then Lieutenant Paul Rosenblum would be the backup as a person, but supported by Ravi and Shosan Gerard Roshi. Yeah.
Now, I know there are other people who have received some sort of recognition.
Yeah.
And where do they fit in? I mean, if there's, I can't think of all the names. I don't want to say the names anyway. But I can think of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I mean, at different times. So how do they fit in? Are they people who are sort of retired from?
Well, I think each of them probably would be best to speak for themselves. I can only share, of course, my impression of the ones that I know of, and but that might be up for correction. But David Beck Roshi.
Yeah.
He lives. Yeah. For instance, he's I mean, for me, in some ways, very important example. He has chosen not to be too closely involved, at least as a teacher, with the Dharma Sangha. He continues his practice relationship with Baker Roshi, and he and I feel very close to David. In fact, we planned a trip to Japan together.
Right.
Yeah, he's in Basel.
Oh, yeah.
And he is very invested. Exactly. He really wants to do his group with, the Swiss people. That's one of his very important.
Yeah.
For him, it's important to do it in Switzerland.
Yeah.
So, and he has his private life with a partner and 3 children and so forth. So
yeah, I met them all.
He simply has no. Exactly.
Yeah, I took Hoitsu and Chitose over there when they were.
Yeah, that's right. Exactly.
We had a wonderful day.
So he comes to sessions and so forth, and but he has chosen basically he'll be in successor meetings, stuff like that. But I recently asked him, so David, because we keep asking him, do you want to be part of this? Do you want to be responsible for such and such? And he's more like, I really would prefer not to have too much responsibility in the Dharma Sangha, but he's available when we need advice or when we need something.
And what about the fellow, God, I know him so well, who lives at Johanneshof.
Otmar.
Yeah.
Yeah, Otmar. Yeah, he's a person everyone loves. He still lives at Johanneshof. And he really, I kind of feel like should speak for himself. He's going through right now, especially a time which is a bit of a life crisis. And he had big medical issues.
I know.
So you
mean
exactly, that was pretty serious.
Yeah.
Epileptic seizures and stuff like that, and then he couldn't.
Has he had more than one?
Anymore. Yeah, he's had two now.
Oh.
And so for various reasons, where we're at with him is he continues to live at Johanneshof. He loves the place. He just wants that to be where he is. But for him, it seems better to just have the space and time to simply be, a simple monk, that kind of feeling. And on that level, like in that way, he can actually practice with people in some immediate sense.
Yeah.
But he's not, for various reasons, not a public teacher for the Dharma Sangha at this point.
Yeah. Well, and then Dharma Sangha and Cresson have both undergone some reorganization in the last year or two. And Becker Roshi feels good about them. He feels they're very solid. And the acquisition of the new building next door at Johanneshof.
Oh, wow. Huge, yeah. It was very important. That was very, very important.
Yeah. I was talking to him when he was trying to convince people. I think I wrote something in support of it. And I told him, this is just like getting Green Gulch for Zen Center. I said, everybody said we can't do it. We can't take it on. I mean, I think every single board member was against getting Green Gulch at Zen Center.
At Zen Center too. Okay, yeah, at Johanneshof there was tremendous resistance too.
And then there were people who continued thinking Green Gulch is such a financial drain on Zen Center and stuff, but especially outside financial advisors. But you know, nobody wants to let go of Green Gulch. I mean, Green Gulch just immediately became integral part, and the center didn't expand. You know, it's just got the city center, Tassajara, and Green Gulch, and Green's Restaurant. That's it. And you know, maybe some other steady stuff, but yeah, I was telling him, I said, what you're doing here is just what you did with Green Gulch. Everybody thinks it's unworkable, it's impractical, it's way too much to take on. You can't even run what you've got, and you think what we've got isn't enough to sustain itself. You know, you need a certain amount of, you need a certain amount to keep living.
It's completely true. In order for a system to actually be to be able to survive, it needs a certain degree of flexibility, and flexibility requires, on some level, complexity. It just needs a certain size for it to be stable, and especially if the name of the game is multi-generational practice. I mean, there's no way that a place like Johanneshof could for future generations bring forth successors. Nobody wants to stay there long enough. It's not a place where you can live. So that I mean, for me, that was completely clear, and I'm so glad that he just did it, because if the name of the game is multi-generational practice, Johanneshof would have had no chance to survive. Without the building.
The history of the Johanneshof.
It was an anthroposophic Kinderheim, children's home.
Oh.
So it was built as part of the philosophy of Rudolf Steiner.
Yeah. And didn't Baker Roshi do some sorts of workshops or something with him, or have some involvement with him at first? Or was he, no, not with him, maybe with his successors?
I don't think so. No, not with Rudolf Steiner personally.
Who am I thinking of?
You are thinking of Johanneshof, but you're thinking of Graf Dürkheim.
Dürkheim! Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Dürkheim, that's who I mean. Dürkheim.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, that's just my age. Names are dropping away. Oh, yeah. Dürkheim. Right. That's who I meant. I mean, Steiner was 100 years ago or something. I don't know when.
Yeah, exactly. That's like, wait, let me do the math here. That doesn't work. Roshi's old. I'm not that old.
Oh, God, that's embarrassing. But I do that all the time. Yeah. And I'm going over the audiobook now for Crooked Cucumber, and every once in a while I'll just throw in the wrong name, or, you know, my brain just, and I'm reading it, and it grabs another noun that has some similar function. God. So, listen, I think that, you know, I could keep going on forever talking to you, and I think we should do this again, but this is going to be a 2-hour podcast, and
wow.
I think that's pretty good. And I've really enjoyed talking with you and hearing all this.
Yeah, me too. That was real fun. Yeah, thank you for doing this. It's great.
So I would like to do it again sometime, because I can see there's other areas we can explore, maybe in a couple of months or something.
Sure.
We'll see. So, hey, do you have any closing thoughts?
Closing thoughts. Well, no, I kind of like it when things, when to the extent that people are listening to this, I think closure always happens within the hearer, a little bit like in Dharma talks, where like how Baker Roshi points to how in many statues, when the figure holds a flower, the flower never blooms, but the flower is shown as like in its early stages or something. So I kind of like incompleteness, because completeness is brought to the situation by the recipient. So I don't know. Let's hope that recipients do that.
Well, that is a very inspiring way to close it, and it's been fun talking with you, and I'm sure I'll be talking to you more, because I'm going to call him up on Wednesday and see if I can pick his brain again some more. So, hey, you know what the Japanese, when they say gambate, what that means?
Oh, yeah.
Right?
Oh, yeah, I do.
So, gambate.
Arigato gozaimasu.
And oh yeah, I remember now, you spent some time in Japan. Okay, we'll get into that next time.
Hi. That's right. Yeah.
All right. Well, what you're doing is great. I'm glad you're there. I'm glad he's doing what he's doing. I'm very glad that I know you.
Yeah, ditto. Me too, very much.
And until we meet again, Nico.
All right,
you
David.
Very much.
Thank you. Take care.
You too.
Bye-bye.
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 Thank you very much, Nicole Baden. That was most illuminating. We look forward to hearing from you again, I hope. So, until next time, this is DC Poobah of Cuke Audio and Cuke Archives, coming to you from Sleepy Sanur with Dogette Bandita, Feline Cuchita, and dear lovely Katrinka. And we're wishing you, and yours, and all of us, a grand awakening.